ICP fans, ICP holders, all of you, this has actually not happened since 2023. And let me just be upfront and tell you, it's not particularly good news. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what that is, all the various things going on within the wider crypto, and even just the overall macro environment at this point in time. We're going to talk about what could be next for crypto, ICP, all the different things. So we're going to be going through that today. So anyway, let's go ahead. We'll dive right in. We're going to start taking a look at crypto bubbles. We can see, obviously, carnage. This is what, like I don't even know how many days it is, 5, 6, 7, 8 days in a row. Pure carnage basically everywhere. We can see here just on the week between 20 and 30% down. Things are crazy. Obviously, we can see ICP down 12% here, 13% actually now. It just updated, it looks like. But doing better generally than some of the other things in the market, but still definitely struggling quite mightily. And we can see here down 26% on the month. Again, better than what we've seen out of a lot of these, which is basically, we got 40% here off of Solana. We got 42% on Ondo, 30% on ETH. 17% on Bitcoin. Really, really strong pullbacks all across the board here. And so, relatively doing all right. But ICP did also not see the pump that a lot of these other ones did. So, it's been rough for ICP. And so, but I do want to remind you all, because this is something where I think, people are kind of losing their minds. Crypto is going crazy. And I mean, 40% on a month. This is ridiculous. I understand that. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to cope over it or whatever, but we can see that this was the worst day for US stocks since 2022. So over $1.75 trillion wiped out today. Tesla down 15%, Nvidia down 5%, Apple down 5%. Keep in mind, these are all multi-trillion-dollar stocks as well. So, this is the equivalent of Bitcoin moving like 5% a day, which if we do look at what Bitcoin did today, we can see it only did 3%. So, not as bad as some of the big boys in the market, but what we can see is, things are looking rough kind of market-wide. And there's a lot of different people that have a lot of different thoughts about this. We'll get into that here in a second. But what we can see so far is that there's a lot of people who are kind of wondering when the Fed starts to step in, maybe cut rates, have interest rates start to go lower, a lot of this type of stuff. There are some people that are kind of thinking that this could be part of the Grand Master Plan, that we do need to see lower rates because there's a lot of US debt that does need to be refinanced in 2025, over $10 trillion. So getting a lower rate on that obviously would be very, very beneficial for the American economy in the longer term. But obviously in the short term, not particularly a rosy picture going on here. Now, if we do take a look at the ICP chart, let's actually pull this up into full screen, and we can see exactly what I'm talking about. What we are seeing is we have actually not been this low since back in 2023. We're here at $5.16. We actually broke below $4 for a moment here, the low being $4.83. We have since wicked up above that. But what you can see is actually on the 31st of December, 2023, the open was $12.26, the high was $15.30, and the close was $13.31. Over 2x where we are now, and that was at the end of 2023. Obviously, we did see some lows down here in 2024, the lowest actually being us dipping back down into that $5 range, high $5 nonetheless, but we did see that, and then obviously we did see a run back up to about the $11 range, and then again some more consolidation and back up, hitting the peaks ultimately at about $15.50. The highs for the year coming earlier on in the year, though, back in March when we saw highs get to about $21 a piece. So, obviously some pretty good movement for ICP kind of in the beginning of the year, but the end of the year, definitely a rough go. We did see that kind of little bit of a run here after the US election back in November, but since then it's pretty much been down only, and it has been dipping hard. And so, as we have already talked about, we haven't seen these numbers basically since late 2023, kind of like the middle of December, because we can actually see the first recorded price, at least on BTCC, or on WEEX, excuse me, this is on WEEX, the 12th of December, 2023. So basically, we have not seen a price lower because the opening price on the 12th of December was $5.35, and the low was $5.34. We are currently at $5.17, which means we are lower. A little bit of some rough news there. Obviously, price has been very, very bad for just ICP generally, even basically ever since kind of the beginning of December. As I mentioned, it's kind of been down only. We've seen a few kind of bumps here and there, but it's been very clear what direction that this has been going. So the next question remains kind of, when do we see this kind of start to let up a little bit, right? And that's what I think is very interesting, and it's hard to know for sure. And what I would say is we are at a point in time where I would say if you're not ready to hold ICP for multiple years, I would probably not be getting into ICP. Now, I personally believe in ICP. I think it has a massive, massive potential, so I'm not particularly worried about holding it. But if you're looking to do some sort of short-term trade, you're treading in dangerous waters. So just be careful with that. What we can also see here is Robert Kiyosaki. He's claiming that the everything bubble is bursting. He is afraid that this crash may be the biggest in history. Germany, Japan, and America have been the engines up until now. And then obviously, we get into some political stuff here, which I'm not looking to go too far into. We can see this crash is going to be bigger than the 1929 crash, a crash that led to the Great Depression. So who knows, right? What we do see is we actually have a chart here that we see. Basically, he's been predicting a crash, the everything bubble, every since 2011, right? And so hard to say for sure, exactly when this actually happens, but he has been calling this for 14 years at this point, right? So, maybe this is the time where he's actually eventually right, but it's hard to say for sure, right? I think what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a pullback, but I think we're seeing a pullback that hopefully should be relatively measured. I think the reason that it's pulling back, or that we are seeing a pullback right now, is because the government is trying to get ahead of this very real and very massive debt problem. I don't think we're past the point of no return yet, but we stack on another $10-15 trillion on top of the current debt that we already have, then things do maybe get a little bit scary. And so I do think kind of, there might be some games going on here to kind of refinance debt at lower rates, a lot of that type of stuff. Who's to say for sure? I'm not involved in those talks. My phone doesn't ring when they have those high level, multinational macroeconomic discussions. So all I can do is be left out here to speculate. But one thing I did want to talk about, kind of moving away from price, moving away from the macro market, because if you've been around, if you're kind of still here watching, you probably have a decent idea of a lot of what's going on here. Doesn't necessarily have anything to do with crypto specifically. It's just more about the macro environment. Crypto relatively is a pretty small fish in a much, much, much larger pond. And so ultimately, kind of whichever way the tide is going, crypto is going to be following. And obviously, since crypto would be considered kind of like a higher beta type of product, if something goes up 10%, it's going to go up 20 or 30 or 50 or 100%. But if something goes down 10%, it's going to go down 20 or 30 or 50 or 100%. And so that's what we need to kind of keep in mind here, is that crypto is just a higher beta product. And so because of that, when we're seeing periods of high volatility, we're going to be seeing periods of very high volatility within crypto. So the next thing that I want to kind of move into, again, moving away from some of the macro stuff, moving away from some of the price action stuff, is going back into ICP. What are they actually doing? What are they actually building? Because even though price is moving down, this is the point in time, in my opinion, where millions get made. Because what's happened so far is retail most likely has probably left. If you're still here, you can be considered one of the few, one of the proud, not one of the Marines, but one of the few and the proud. And then what we're seeing here is we're going to be starting to see a lot of these really, really high quality projects on major discount, right? And so now you can start to go in, you can start to pick up a lot of these high quality projects on major discounts. Look at Bitcoin, for example. I mean, down 20 to 25% from highs. You're essentially getting, a 25% discount on Bitcoin than, what you wouldn't have gotten a couple months ago. And so same thing with ICP down about 67% from its recent highs. Again, another discount if you want to look at it like that. I personally don't view nobody just cares about ICP. I think exactly the opposite. I think a lot of what they are doing is very, very, very useful and very bullish in the longer term future. And so the fact that we are seeing price pull back so hard is it can be considered a good thing. And I'm going to be looking at DCAing in over the next little while. I do think we probably, if I'm being realistic, we probably do have a little further to fall. So I'm not going in too heavy right now, just because I do think we have a little bit further to go. But as I always do, on the way down, I'm usually kind of picking up little bits here and there just because you never really truly do know where the bottom is. So anyway, one thing I want to go into and check out real quick though is we have an explanation finally from Dominic about how caffeine generates self-writing apps, which is really, really cool. And I actually had a more detailed presentation of this at ETH Denver. I explained a little bit of this kind of in that previous video, but here we have a super simple graphic of how this actually works, which I think is super cool. So obviously what we can see here is we have the app users interacting with the app. We also have the app owner interacting from the app. This is obviously from the front end side, and this is kind of from like the admin or like the back end side. And what we can see is the app owner is then interacting with the chat, like via chat or via like the English language, or which actually it's multilingual from what I understand. So it's any language that you want to code in. The Caffeine AI app then essentially takes this and it goes to the app and it writes the new code, it builds and deploys the software, it migrates the data. And this right here is the key part, migrating the data. So if you have an app that's been used and you want to push a new update, and let's say add in another button or add in another feature or do whatever, what the ICP previous app is actually going to migrate all of this data into your new version of the app, which is really, really cool. And a lot of these things do not do this. And this is what they called orthogonal persistence. This is what they were talking about in the presentation that I was watching at ETH Denver, which I thought was very cool. But they essentially are able to migrate the data. And then obviously you can see all of the updates in this new app that's just been kind of updated just like that. Super quick, super easy. Obviously this sounds potentially too good to be true. It sounds really, really awesome, actually. And so I am a little bit nervous that maybe, it might underdeliver, in some capacity. If that does, obviously, that'd be a little disheartening to see. But if this does kind of deliver in the grand view of what a lot of us think it could be, I think we could see some really, really crazy things coming out of ICP and some major moves from a price action perspective. So we'll have to see for sure. Who knows exactly what's going to happen for certain, but this is something that I feel pretty confident in that we will see something from ICP. Obviously, we have the cycle burn rate continuing to go up. We have the ICP, just like overall total number of ICP burned continuing to go up. The transactions per second continue to hold. It's basically like Solana and ICP are kind of far and away the two that do the vast majority of crypto transactions. And even then, the ICP transactions are generally like a lot larger and a lot heavier than the Solana transactions. So, not all transactions are exactly created equal, but it's been really interesting to kind of see all of this technical development happening while we've actually been kind of looking through an overall like pretty bad market generally. And so that's one of the things I want to kind of like remind you guys, keep in mind the fact that like things will get better eventually. We don't know when that will be. Obviously, in times like this, we need to be very, very careful with trading leverage. Kind of going back to here, we do have that plug for WEEX. As you can see, I do use WEEX to trade. I do use it to analyze and talk about a lot of different stuff. I do have the links in the description below if you are interested in trading anything. But again, as I was mentioning, you have to be very, very careful, particularly in times like these, going too crazy on high leverage. I mean, if you're going to be doing any leverage at all, personally, I would not be doing leverage at this point. I'd probably limit my buys to spot, or if you want to trade futures for whatever reason, just do like 1x leverage. But if you want to be doing leverage trading, I would be doing 2, 3, maybe 4x at the absolute top. I would be very, very careful just because we don't really know how much worse this is going to get. This could be the bottom. It could go down another 80% from here. We don't really know for sure. So you just need to be very careful. Make sure that you're kind of not getting in over your head, especially if you are new to trading. This is not the time to be trying out leverage trading. So anyway, just kind of keep that in mind as you go through. But overall, like I said, I do have all the links in the description below. If you are interested in getting started in trading, what I would say is, this is a good time to learn. Maybe not a good time to learn leverage trading, but you should be paying attention. Most of retail has left. You are one of the few left. This is a really, really good time to kind of start building your skills, building your credibility, understanding how to do this type of stuff. So when we see another, kind of November, December type timeframe come back, you know exactly what you're doing and you're prepared for it. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and a subscribe. It really, really does help me out. Also, if you have any comments, thoughts, feelings, questions, whatever, just drop those in the comment section. I do try to read and respond to all of those. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts, just kind of where do you think we're going on ICP? Do you think $4 ICP is possible? $3, $2, $1, right? I mean, what do you think is possible here? And how do we eventually kind of see this playing out? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts of that. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.